Welcome back to the morning show here on the Raj News. Nigeria is a middle-income mixed economy and emerging market with expanding manufacturing, financial service, communications, technology and entertainment sectors. Well, joining us now to speak on the Nigerian economy and what needs to be done to engender it is the economic advisor of the Atiku campaign organization, Mustafa Chike-Obi. Good morning. Many thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Always.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Sure.
Let me begin by asking you, because this is a period of elections, 5 days to go.
Yes.
How damaging will a political upheaval be to the Nigerian economy at this time?
Terrible. But we're not expecting any upheavals. We think, I believe, and I've said it very clearly, I believe it's in the interest of the INEC chairman to conduct free and fair elections. I believe he will do so. So I think that once it's free and fair, both parties will accept the result, and Nigerians will accept the result. But it's important that it's seen to be free and fair. And every sign I'm getting from the INEC chairman is that he intends to conduct a free and fair election.
But even with the volatility in the stock markets, the foreign investments being pulled out, don't you think that is enough warnings already of how, even though we're not expecting any upheaval, the situation already is for the market?
Well, there are many reasons why the Nigerian stock market has been volatile. The U.S. market has been more volatile than the Nigerian market. There's the feeling in the air that there's going to be a general economic contraction worldwide. So there's reason for volatility. But I think, yes, there's increased because of the election, and it always happens. And once the election is over, no matter who wins, I think you will see the stock market rise and stabilize.
All right, the president of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, and his entire campaign team have always been saying that the reason why Nigeria finds themselves where we are, this particular deep hole, or this cul-de-sac that we find ourselves in, is because people like Atiku Abubakar, when they were in office, all right, as the vice president, and during the reign of PDP, they really did not manage this economy well. And they're saying that coming back is almost like Nigeria shooting themselves in the foot, or like a dog going back to its vomit.
Well, everybody knows me. I'm a radical on the economic front. I believe we should have double-digit GDP growth for the next 20 years. Any other policy is slow death for Nigeria. If we're not growing our GDP at 10% or higher for the next 10, 15 years, we will never get the kind of national wealth that will lift all the masses out of poverty. Anything else is trivial. People talk about corruption and corruption. I did a calculation of the maximum amount of money that is possible to steal from the federal government. It's an easy calculation. And it's about somewhere between 500 billion and 800 billion a year, the maximum.
Naira or dollars?
Naira. 500 to 800 billion maximum. And I can go through a calculation with you. It's easy. But 1% GDP growth is roughly 1 trillion naira. So we're spending all our energies focusing on 5 to 800 billion of possible corruption and ignoring the fact that if we grew our GDP by 3 or 4% higher, the national wealth that will accrue to us is about 5 trillion. So yes, corruption is a bad thing, we should face it, but corruption should not be the be-all and end-all of any government. People in diaspora, listen to your last guest, they are obsessed with corruption. There's corruption in America, huge corruption in America. But because their GDP and their wealth is so huge, it becomes a small factor in the economy. Let us grow our GDP at 10%. Let's keep corruption at a minimum. But government should not be focused entirely on corruption. That's what the problem with us.
But during the economic boom, when oil prices were soaring, yes, nothing was really done with that particular amount of money, and that's why right now we find ourselves in a very deep hole, because when oil prices were soaring, when things were rosy, we're not probably investing, rather people were stealing these monies.
I find it hypocritical for President Muhammadu Buhari to drive from Aso Villa to the airport, I know in Abuja. The roads are beautiful. Those are world-class roads. Somebody built those roads. The roads didn't just appear. When they talk about this 16 years of waste, and they're driving on the roads in Abuja that were built by this so-called 16 years, everybody now has a cell phone That's all because of PDP effect. There are many things that PDP has done. PDP didn't grow the GDP at the rate I wanted, so things could have been better. But to say PDP did nothing in 16 years is a blatant lie that every year, every day, anybody who lives in Nigeria, they will know PDP did some things. And they did some things wrong. And PDP is a vehicle. The PDP today is not the PDP of 2011. Nor will it be the PDP of 2023. The APC today was not the ACN or CPC of before. Let us look at the people and their policies and stop this focus on the vehicle that he used to get there. Look at Atiku and his policies. Look at Buhari and his policies, and let's choose the better one. And stop being obsessed with whether it's APC or PDP. That's my view.
Let's come to this, your GDP projection.
Yes, sir.
In a period of 4 years, that's what, if Atiku wins, that's what he has to deliver what you're talking.
Yes. If he doesn't, I'll be the leader of the people.
So how are you going to achieve this double-digit growth in a 4-year period?
Let me tell you briefly how to do it. You have a policy that says you want to grow. Once you agree that that's the policy of the team, then you have to have expansionary monetary policies and expansionary fiscal policies. So you must have a massive guarantee program where the federal government is providing guarantees to the private sector to allow them to go raise money for projects. We don't have that right now. Nigeria's guarantee to GDP is about 5%. In the US, a developed country, it's about 85%. So we must use our balance sheet in a more sensible way. Instead of borrowing money that we can't pay back or interest is killing us, let's give guarantees to the private sector. That will explode the economy. But simply, I think that everybody that's in the core economic team of Atiku will lay down his plan for getting 10% GDP growth within 3 years. If you can't do it, don't take the job. It can be done. China has done it, Malaysia has done it, Brazil has done it. Other people have done it that are not any smarter than we are. So yes, once the government is on the same path and agrees that growth is paramount, then we'll get there. Now, I can get into all technical things about how you monetary policy, fiscal policy, tax policy, you lower the tax rate, you zero to the corporate. You can do all that. Well, that's just going to be boring. But believe it or not, if we don't achieve 10% GDP growth by 2021, then I will be one of those saying, let's look for a new government.
Does your principal accept this projection? Because we don't want a situation where in future we'll be hearing it's Chike-Obi who said it. That's not what Atiku said.
Let me tell you something about, I have interacted with a few presidents, a number of them. The difference with Atiku Abubakar, he will listen to you and he will disagree with you and tell you why he disagrees with you. Yes, we have had these discussions. He is completely owns the policy document. He's not going to back away from the policy document. It's his document. We gave him advice. There are things he didn't like that were removed. I wanted to put in 5 million jobs a year. He couldn't take, he said, make it 3. So we had the discussions. So yes, he will accept everything in his document and he will live by it.
Well, you talked about corruption and you also talked about individuals are not the vehicles bringing them to power.
Yes.
Because very quickly, this election has turned to a matter of integrity of the candidates.
Yes.
So does it make sense, does it make any economic sense to grant amnesty to corrupt individuals or corporations, considering the economy that we have at the moment? Should your candidate win, which is what he's likely to push for, as he mentioned at the candidates' town hall meeting, saying, I may consider corruption, yes. Granting amnesty to corrupt individuals. Does it make any economic sense to do that?
Yes, but let me say something to you. The biggest offense in the United States of America is tax evasion or any tax issues. They take it very seriously and they pursue you for years. Even in America, they have tax amnesties. They will say to you, if you pay your back taxes in the next 2 years, we'll give you a tax amnesty. They do it, states do it all the time. The US federal government does it all the time. Yes, the idea of giving amnesty to people at certain times so they can bring back their money and make it a productive money has been tested everywhere in the world. Atiku hasn't said he would do it. He said he will consider it. And I think he should consider it. And I think that when you look at the social impact, the moral impact, and the financial impact, you make a decision. But it's not something you rule out right away. So I think what he will do is he will consider all the impacts of it and then make a decision.
But the argument is that when you do that, you then enable others and encourage them to also loot the Commonwealth and return some of it, since they're going to get amnesty anyways.
That's what I just said. You consider the moral, you consider the social impact, you consider the financial impact, and you make a decision based on all three. If what you're saying is actually correct, then yes, you don't give amnesty. But if it turns out that the financial impact overwhelms the social and moral impact, or there are checks and balances to prevent future looting, then you consider all those things. But it's naive to say you're going to rule it out right from the start. That's all he's saying.
All right, okay, moving on. We looked at the economy of Nigeria, and we know that it's not growing as it should be. A lot of people have blamed it, not just on this government alone, or even on past governments, by saying that we focus more on baggage economy, simply just putting in oil, as against knowledge-based economy that we get to see around the world. As we actually, as you, as an economic person for the Atiku campaign organization, come on, is there going to be a paradigm shift to knowledge-based economy as against baggage economy and the over-dependence on oil?
Well, you have to look at all three. There's something in economics, and I don't want to bore you, and if I'm being patronizing, please forgive me. It's called a multiplier effect. So when you spend $1 or a naira, the impact of that naira, so a low multiplier would be 0.5. So you spend a naira and you get back half a naira. And a high multiplier would be like 1.8. You spend 1 naira, you get 1.8 back. The problem with what they're doing today, Nigeria is a consuming country, not a producing country. So when you give people money, you have a less than 1 multiplier. They spend the money on foreign goods or goods that have foreign component. So what you should do is you spend your money on creating capacity, productive capacity, roads, electricity. We should be spending our money on those things so that people can be more productive and earn more. All those things, like housing. Housing is very, very important. We have a plan to build 120,000 units every year through issuing guarantees to builders. Because housing creates, not only do you build a house, you buy the furniture for the house, you buy fridges, you buy appliances, you buy all sorts of things. So housing creates a high multiplier. So we're going to build houses, 120,000 units across the country every year. That will create 3 to 5 million jobs, direct and indirect. And the other things we want to do that have a high multiplier. But handing people 10,000 naira in the marketplace has actually a less than 1 multiplier. It actually contracts your economy, doesn't expand it, which is what they're doing. So they want to make Nigerians dependent on the federal government, school feeding program. No, let's make the parents productive so they can feed their children themselves. We don't need to be giving food to children in school. It's not productive. So yes, we're going to focus on things with high multipliers that can grow the economy. And if we're not growing the economy by 10% in 2022, 2021, 2022, criticize us. And we're not going to blame Buhari's government for that. We will lay down where we are when we start. We will tell you where we're going, and you will not hear us from June 1 say anything about Buhari's government anymore. We'll tell you what he has done for us, and we'll tell you what we're going to do for the Nigerians, and that's it. No more blaming past government. It's ridiculous and it's silly.
Talking about your government guarantee, which you mentioned now.
Yes.
Nigeria don't respect the sanctity of contract. Don't you think if this happens to be the case, we've seen instances, these guarantees, are they not going to come back as liabilities to the government?
Let me say this to you. On the government side, Nigerian government has never defaulted on any of its obligations. It has a really good record of honoring its obligations. So now your concern is whether the people you give guarantees to will honor their obligations. Well, there's things called underwriting guidelines. For example, if you want to get a guarantee for building a 4th mainland bridge, you have to bring 20% equity, which you lose first. So if you don't build it or don't do what we tell you to do, you will lose your equity and we'll take over the bridge and give it to somebody else. So yes, there are ways to make sure that your counterparty has serious underwriting guidelines and that if they don't meet the underwriting guidelines, there's penalties. So yes, you don't just give a guarantee. You give a guarantee, you have an underwriting guideline, and you supervise the project. So there are ways to do it. But I agree that's a risk.
What is your take on the special economic zones by this administration? I mean, they had just recently signed agreements with development partners. This is to grow the made in Nigeria products for exports. And so far, there will be 3 test runs for that. What is your take on this policy to grow the economy?
You mean the policy that my friend Udo Doma went and imported Malaysians to tell him how to do it? That's the policy you're talking about, his labs and all that stuff.
The Economic Growth and Recovery Plan, this is part of it.
The problem I have with that is that he doesn't tell me what his objective. You know, you should be able to say in one word what your economic policy is. I can tell you ours is growth and employment. What is his? What is the federal government's economic plan? Why doesn't the president of Nigeria think he should have a chief economic advisor in 4 years? He doesn't have one. He has not appointed a chief economic advisor. What is it telling you? They have no coherent plan. They have no coherent team. They can't tell you in one word what their plan is. They have this ERGP. I read it. Any second-year economic students can write that. It doesn't tell you what to do and how to do it. So I know about it, but I'm not impressed with it.
Let's look at one of part of your policy. And Atiku Abubakar has spoken about this in the last interview, that he will float the naira. Want me to quote him? He said, I would prefer to float the naira because I believe that it will bring about more stable exchange rate. The devaluation that is likely to result can be balanced with the relatively huge sums of foreign currency that will come into the economy. I'm quoting him in an interview. Now,
so let me clarify
No,
this.
let me just learn.
Yes.
Now, we know the impact of floating the currency on inflation.
Yes.
And the pains it will inflict on Nigeria.
Yes.
For an administration that's had 4 years to deliver. Don't you think that the short-term pain Nigerians will feel will overwhelm the long-term benefit of that kind of policy?
So let me clarify. First of all, there are many floats of currency. You can have a managed float, and you can have a free total float. So a managed float is where we all agree economically that a free total float is where you want to get to. But how do you get there? We want to do a managed float. So let me tell you what will happen. On June 1, we will eliminate the 305. The 305 is a joke. It's the 305 number. Everything is priced with the 360 number. When you buy your stuff in the marketplace, it's this 360 number that applies. The 305 only exists so that certain people can get it at 305 and make an arbitrage, including CBN. CBN buys from 305 from Nigerian government NNPC and sells at 360. So we're going to go from 305 to 360, so that doesn't create any inflationary impact, because that's where we already are in terms of pricing. Then you do a managed float, where you find some way to adjust it slowly over a period of time. So nobody's asking for immediate pain. You have to manage the inflationary impact with the beneficial impact of a currency that allows you to produce locally. So no, we're not talking about an immediate float. We're talking about a managed float, and it'll be after consideration and after looking at other factors. So we'll go to 360 almost immediately. But we'll probably, in a very sensible way, let the market adjust itself so that it gets to wherever the market thinks it should get to over a period of time.
But the CBN is likely to say that what they are doing is managed float.
What does the 305 stand for? Why do they buy our dollars from NNPC at 305 and sell it at 360? By what right does CBN have to buy it at 305 and sell it at 360?
And the difference goes to the government.
No, it doesn't go to the government. It goes to whoever CBN decides it goes to. That's the problem. That is spending money that's unappropriated without authority. They decide. They can give it to you if you want. If they like you, they say, well, you're importing something that's important, we'll give it to you at 305. They give some to all marketers, which is a hidden subsidy. All I'm saying is let it be at 360. The federal government will have more money, the states will have more money, and everybody knows that 360 is the rate at which you price our goods. The 305 is completely irresponsible. I would say it's almost illegal.
All right, okay. A lot of people criticize the borrowing culture of Nigeria, and especially this particular administration, although the vice president has said that every forward-thinking economy actually hinges on borrowing.
Yes.
What's the policy of Atiku Abubakar towards borrowing, and how to probably in helping to grow this particular economy?
Well, like I said, you have to borrow for productive capacity building. You cannot borrow to pay salaries. You cannot borrow to service the debt you already have, because it's a trap that in the end is unsustainable. So if you tell me you want to build Fourth Mainland Bridge, I'm a big believer in Fourth Mainland Bridge. And the reason why I love Fourth Mainland Bridge is because the Third Mainland Bridge, I was in Lagos when it was being built, in conjunction with the Falamo Bridge, was what opened up the entire Lekki axis all the way down there. And the wealth it created is monumental. If you build a Fourth Mainland Bridge, I think that you can develop from Ekpe all the way down to Ondo State and further. So I think that we should build infrastructure that creates productive capacity. Borrowing for that is fine. But borrowing to pay salaries like we have been doing and to continue to service that, our debt service to revenue is now about 60%. It's unsustainable. In every financial model, your debt service to revenue should never exceed 35%. Every financial model. So we are walking down a path where we have to rein in our debt, our direct borrowing. That's why I want to use guarantees, because guarantees don't increase your debt service. And we must be very, very conscious of the fact that we can no longer borrow to pay salaries and borrow to service debt. So yes, we will borrow when we have to for infrastructure, for productive things. We will do it through guarantees. We will support the private sector to do that. And hopefully we can bring our debt down and our debt service down.
One of the factors said to be affecting the economy is also the abysmal budget cycle that we have. Each administration has struggled with this. The President and Muhammad Buhari administration had promised to return it to the regular cycle, but even that has failed. I mean, right now the 2019 budget is in limbo and probably will be till after the general elections. Would Atiku Abubakar ensure that this returns to normal? And how much of an effect really does this have on the economy?
I'm going to say something that I think my principal will probably yell at me for. When they came out with their budget this year, which is a ridiculous budget, I call it a budget of income challenge, revenue challenge budget. They can't, revenue last year was 3.5 trillion naira, 3.5. Mm-hmm. Revenue this year is likely to be less than that, giving them the whole year. Call it 3 trillion, 3.2 trillion. And the budget is 9 trillion. There's no way they can do it. So we came up with our own budget. We have an alternative budget, and we did it in a month. Balanced budget, no borrowing, it's out there. So we have it. But my principal has decided that this is not the time to produce it for many reasons. It seems arrogant, it seems presumptuous.
Exactly, you're not in power. Why do you have a budget?
Exactly. But we did it. As an academic exercise, we have it. And if he authorizes me, I will share it with you. But we do have a budget that we did in a month. You can do your budget in a month. So to answer your question directly, if we come into power, we won't come into power in June, we will have a budget ready by September.
I'm particularly interested in this, your reference to the arbitrage that is going on right now.
Yes.
If you can close that gap, you said it will bring more money not only to the federal government, but to all... To the states. To the states also, as far as the local government. Yeah. Now, how much of arbitrage is going on right now, by your own calculation?
Guess. I think that it's a guess. There's about $2 billion a month in all revenues. Taxes, whatever NNPC earns. CBN buys it at 305. If they bought it at 360 every month, that would be 55 naira times 2 billion. That's 110 billion a month. Multiplied by 12 months, it's about 1.2, 1.3 trillion. That's the amount of arbitrage going on in a year.
Okay, let me just take you to two questions.
Yes, sir.
Because we seem to be running out of time. Because I need some clarification.
Please.
Because sometimes when politicians talk, the experts talk, there seems to be some disparity. So I need that clarification. Now, your principal, Atiku Abubakar, said he will sign the African Free Trade Continental Agreement, which the current administration has refused to sign. And they gave reasons. Some people said, good reason, including the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, that if you sign that, Nigeria will become a dumping ground because we don't produce for export right now. Mm-hmm. So why will Atiku Abubakar sign that agreement right away, given the rationale?
Let me tell you why.
President Buhari has given.
Let me tell you why. You don't get better by hiding in your village and not competing with other people. You get better by competing with better people. If they're producing better than us, then our challenge is not to hide but to improve our education, our training, our productive capacity. So yes, we want to compete with the best. And hiding behind a wall in your village so that you don't know you don't compete with people who are better than you is not the answer for Nigeria's long-term progress. We will sign it, and within 5 years, we will compete. They will become the dumping ground. That's our objective. That's our belief, that we can be so good, we can be better than them, and we can become... Ghana used to beat us in football all the time. All the time. When I was growing up, Ghana was a nuisance to us. There was a team called Ashanti Kotoko that used to be stationary stores all the time. But we got better. We competed. We trained our people. Now we beat them. That's the way to go. Hiding is not the answer, sir.
Second question.
Okay, the second question. Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world. That's official.
Yes.
Now, this government prides itself as catering for the poorest of the poor.
Yes.
With their empower, with their trader money, school feeding and all that. What is Atiku going to do for the poorest of the poor when he comes to the office so that at least they will feel some succor?
Let me say this about catering. I'm sure you have children. And your children often, when they're young, they want things that you shouldn't give them. Candy, chocolate. Mommy, I want chocolate. I'm sure you've heard that story before. But you decide, my child shouldn't watch cartoons more than an hour a day. Let him study. Let her study. So giving people candy is not the best thing for them. Let us go to the villages and build for them running water. Let's give them roads. Let them make them more productive. Giving them 5,000 naira a day for the rest of eternity will not help them. So yes, I believe that the way to cater for the poorest people is to make them more productive. Give them education, give them roads, give them water, give them electricity. Not give them 10,000 naira a month. That is just disaster.
But these things, these infrastructures take time. And so between when these infrastructures are actually put in place and the immediate, what happens in that vacuum?
I tell everybody who asks me this question to go and read Oliver Twist or read Gulliver's Travel, and you will see the problems the poor had in pre-industrial Britain. Oliver Twist, they used to keep the kids in those boarding houses, and they used to ask for more. They used to eat gruel. They call it gruel. This is the poorest thing that can come. Everybody must make sacrifices. The problem with us is that our leaders don't make sacrifices. I believe, for example, that from time to time, the president should fly a Nigerian commercial. We isolate our leaders, we make them so comfortable, they don't know what's going on. So yes, I agree that there should be sacrifices made, but it has to be made from everybody. And the way to make people follow you is to say, here are the sacrifices I'll make as president. I know you're making these sacrifices, but here's what I'm going to do for you, so that 2 or 3 years from now, you will see that you're clearly better off.
Well, the former vice president has not indicated that he will be making such sacrifices.
The former vice president?
Yes,
well, he will have to make them. He has never been president before. And people like me will tell him the sacrifice he has to make. And he may or may not listen. He'll be president. But I hope he listens.
Well, finally, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics is supposed to release the Q4 2018 GDP report. What is your forecast? What do you think that we'll be seeing tomorrow when that report is released?
Somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5, which is not good enough. I want to see 8, 9, 10%. So it's not good enough.
Coming from the existing 1.9, 1.7 that we have, you
the
expect
reason
to
why
see an 8%?
1.9 is that we have an inept economic government. This government is inept economically. There's not a single economist in the economic team, not one. Not one. Now, people will say, Dr. Chike-Obi, who I respect as an economist, but he's the chief economic advisor to the vice president. The vice president himself is not an economist. Udo Odoma is not an economist. Emefiele is not an economist.
How about the finance minister?
The last one wasn't an economist, she was an accountant. There was not one of them that was an economist. And not that I think economists know everything, but you should have one economist in your team. One.
Okay, despite all the optimism you are radiating.
Optimism?
I said, despite the optimism you are radiating.
Yes.
From that seat, perhaps from your study where you dish out all the policies to advise your principal.
Yes, sir.
A lot of economists also and market watchers are saying that turning around the Nigerian economy is not going to be a tea party.
Yes.
And that you will face the same challenges this government is facing.
Let me tell you what I tell my principal. Anybody that's canvassing for any of these key positions in the economy should be disqualified. And there's the reason why. The job is so hard that anybody that takes any of these jobs will not sleep more than 4 hours a night for the next 2 years. So people need to know the challenge is monumental, it's big, but it has to be faced. So honestly, I agree with you. We're going to face serious challenges. You have to travel all over the country. You have to make plans. You have to sleep 2 or 3 hours a night. This is going to be a very, very difficult job, but we must do it.
And you're ready for it?
My principal is ready for it.
You're pushing the bus now. Many thanks, Mr. Mustafa Chike-Obi, for being on the show this morning.
It's my pleasure.